3% of Epstein's files released, 97% locked away. 41 seconds of Trump frozen in silence live before 330 million Americans. Jasmine Crockett's words ignited the Capitol, exposing corruption, power, and betrayal at the highest level. This wasn't politics, it was a battle for the nation's soul. If silence screams louder than lies, what do you hear in Trump's refusal to answer? Stay with us. This is a story worth every second of your time. The camera cuts in mid-roar, not from the quiet chamber but from the chaos outside the Capitol itself. Thousands of protesters, pressed against barricades, fists in the air, cardboard signs painted with 2 words in black and red, full files, helicopters circle overhead, blades chopping through chairs, and news anchors barked a breaking headline into a million living rooms. The Department of Justice confirms only 3% of the Epstein files have been released. The crowd doesn't need translation. 97% of the truth is still locked in vaults. And tonight, the country demands answers. Inside, the Capitol Rotunda has been transformed into something rawer than politics, lights blazing like interrogation, lamps, cameras stacked 3D in every corner, the hush of anticipation vibrating like the moment before a jury returns. The stage isn't the Senate floor or a backroom hearing. It's a grand hall commandeered for a special televised session, chosen for symbolism where Lincoln once lay in state, where democracy itself has been both mourned and reborn. Tonight, that marble echoes with tension. Jasmine Crockett appears. In frame, not with a soft stride but with the force of someone walking into fire. Her heels strike the stone like drumbeats, the protest outside sensing to her rhythm as though the nation itself is walking with her. Her eyes don't scan the room, they lock instantly on Donald Trump, seated just 30 feet away, jaw tight, lips curled into that smirk he uses like armor. For a moment, time freezes, survivor against system, truth against power, justice against silence. The anchor's voice cracks through. She has subpoenaed, she has demanded, and she has been denied. Tonight, Jasmine Crockett confronts Donald Trump in a hearing unlike any America has seen. Viewers at home lean closer. They already know the stakes, but not the secrets. What could possibly be so dangerous in those files that only crumbs just 3% were spared? Trump shifts, deliberately loud, the scrape of his chair like a blade across concrete. He mutters something under his breath, half sneer, half growl, and Jasmine's head tilts ever so slightly, like a predator catching the sound of prey. No greetings, no theatrics. She grips the microphone, voice steady but burning. America, you've been fed scraps while predators feasted. The truth is not 3%, it is 100, and we will not stop until every page sees daylight. The crowd outside hears it through giant speakers and ERUPTS, shaking the windows of the Capitol. The camera cuts to Trump, face red, eyes darting toward the cameras as if calculating escape routes. For once, he doesn't dominate the stage, he's cornered in it. The hall feels like a court with no exit, and the jury is the American people. Every breath, every blink, every silence tonight will be evidence. The gavel slams once. The nation holds its breath. The battle has begun. If only 3% of the truth is here, what horrors are buried in the missing 97%? Jasmine's words hang heavy in the chamber, the echo of 100% truth still rattling through marble and bone. She turns her gaze toward the DOJ officials seated stiffly at the back, their faces unreadable under the heat of the cameras. Her tone sharpens, cutting through the air like a scalpel. You handed this Congress only 3% of the Epstein files. 3% while survivors wait for justice and predators rest easy. That is not compliance, that is complicity. Murmurs ripple across the room, pens scratch frantically. Lenses zoom in tighter, and every reporter senses a headline writing itself in real time. Then the interruption comes, low at first, then swelling until it drowns the silence. Trump leans into his mic, smirk twisting into a sneer. Spare us the sermon, Jasmine. You're nothing more than a puppet for the Democrats waving strings for ratings. The words slam across the chamber like a gavel made of iron. Gasps, jeers, even laughter ripple through the crowd. For a split second, it feels as though he has seized at the room, but Jasmine doesn't flinch. Her jaw tightens, her eyes narrow into fire, and when she speaks, it detonates. I'm no puppet of politicians, I am a puppet of victims, the women and children who were silenced while you smiled. And you, Mr. Trump, you are a puppet of silence itself, The chamber convulses, half erupting in applause, half shouting in fury, and the sound is so chaotic that the microphones crackle. With distortion, reporters scramble, fingers flying, desperate to capture the exact phrasing they know will dominate every broadcast by nightfall. Trump jerks forward, red blooming across his cheeks, and his hand crashes against the desk with a thunderclap that startles even the stenographer. Bang! The sound ricochets, bouncing off walls, off history, off the conscience of every American watching. His voice rips through the uproar, raw and ragged. Say it then, if you're so brave, say my name, say who I protected, say it now in front of the whole damn country. The chamber freezes in a breathless suspension, the kind of silence that isn't absence but a storm pulling back before the strike. Cameras whipped to Jasmine's face, her expression unreadable yet charged, like a cold blade seconds before release. Protesters outside pound the barricades harder, the sound vibrating through the windows like a war drum. Every heartbeat in the room seems to ask the same question. Will she cross the line he just drew? The stage is no longer a hearing, it's an arena of truth and denial, justice and defiance, to figures locked in a duel that feels older than politics. Jasmine lifts her hand slowly, fingers brushing the edge of her binder, eyes never leaving Trump's. She doesn't answer yet, and that choice makes the tension unbearable. A cliffhanger sharpened to a knife's edge. The nation waits, breathless, because the next word she speaks could shatter more than his composure. It could shatter the entire wall of silence. The chamber still hums from Trump's thunderous stare, but Jasmine doesn't rush. She lets the silence stretch, weaponizing it, until even the air feels brittle. Then she leans into the mic, her voice low and deliberate, each syllable a strike. We issued subpoenas, we demanded accountability. And what did the Department of Justice give us? 3%. Not oversight obstruction. Not transparency manipulation. Tapers rustle like nervous whispers, senators shift in their chairs, and the cameras drink in every flicker of her resolve. She raises a folder, its spine cracked from overuse, and slaps it against the desk with a crack that makes the whole room flinch. This is what they call compliance. A few crumbs while the wolves feast on silence. She turns her gaze to the audience, not just in the chamber but across millions of screens. This is bigger than one man. This is about whether the American justice system serves the people or shields the powerful. And when those who are poor, when those from minority communities cry out, the system doesn't just ignore them, it mutes them. Her tone sharpens, the weight of her own history pressing forward. I remember a young woman, a survivor, trembling as she asked me, will anyone ever believe me? And the truth is under this cover-up. The answer was no. A gasp rolls through the chamber. Even hardened staffers glance down, unable to meet her stare. Trump scoffs, shaking his head, but his smirk falters under the force of her words. Jasmine doesn't give him room to recover. Subpoenas are not suggestions, oversight is not optional. And every time you bury the truth, every time you choke the voices of survivors, you are not just betraying them, you are betraying the very oath this nation was built on. She pounds her fist once, not out of anger but to anchor the point in stone. The crowd outside roars in sync, their chant pulsing through the glass like a heartbeat. Full files, full truth. The tension escalates as reporters lock eyes, sensing the story deepening. Jasmine straightens, her voice rising to a crescendo, each word ringing like a verdict. This chamber cannot be a graveyard for justice. The Constitution does not exist to protect the comfortable. It exists to give a voice to the voiceless, a shield to the defenseless, a promise to those who ask, even in a whisper, will anyone ever believe me? The question lingers, sharp and shattering. Trump stiffens, gripping the desk, his knuckles white against the polished wood. Jasmine leans closer to the mic, her final words a blade slicing through the uproar. What would you do if justice itself was put on mute? Stand silent with the guilty, or rise with the truth? The chamber freezes, the echo of her challenge reverberating like a bell tolling for judgment, and the nation waits to see who dares answer. The lights dim, and suddenly, the chamber transforms into a theater of evidence. A massive screen flickers to life behind Jasmine, the seal of Congress looming at the top corner. The first slide slams onto the screen, a corporate registry document. Stamped in bold ink, the company name is unfamiliar, generic, harmless on its surface. Jasmine's voice cuts through the quiet like a prosecutor delivering the opening shot. This, she says, pointing to the glowing projection, was Epstein's so-called employer during his work release in 2008, a shell, a phantom, a lie, built only to give him a door out of his cell and back into the lives of girls who thought the nightmare was over. Gasps ripple across the room, and even the reporters, seasoned cynics, lean forward. The next slide appears. Photographs of the office building, empty floors, locked doors, no employees, no phones ringing. Jasmine doesn't let the silence breathe. While supposedly under state supervision, Epstein clocked into this job every day. Not to work, to haunt, to groom, to abuse. Her words snap like whips, each syllable another lash of revelation. She details the pattern guards signing falsified timesheets, drivers picking him up, victims delivered through the front door of a business that existed only as camouflage. The image of handcuffs dissolves into the image of open doors, and the horror is undeniable. Freedom wrapped in the costume of law. This is not negligence, Jasmine cedes. This is complicity. They gave a predator paperwork and called it rehabilitation. That's when Marjorie Taylor Greene can't contain herself. She leaps from her seat, jabbing a finger at the screen, her voice shrieking into the mic. Lies, more Democrat fiction. You people invent fairy tales to smear good men. The chamber erupts into chaos, voices rising, chairs scraping. For a heartbeat, it looks as if the hearing will splinter into pure disorder, but Jasmine doesn't blink. She pivots, turns her whole body toward Greene, and levels a stare so cold it cuts through the uproar. Fairy tales. Do you call the testimonies of survivors fairy tales? Do you call forged immigration papers fairy tales? Or is it only a fairy tale, and the villain isn't supposed to look like you? The roar collapses into silence, Greene sputtering without a line to stand on. Jasmine walks back to the microphone, her presence now consuming the room. She leans forward, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that the microphones carry like thunder. The question before us is not whether Epstein lied. That is proven. The question is who opened the door, who looked away, who signed the forms and handed him the keys. The images behind her scroll faster now, paper trails, signatures, surveillance logs that show nothing but absence where there should have been eyes. The chamber feels less like a hearing and more like a trial by fire, the flames licking higher. With each revelation, Trump shifts uneasily, MTG slumps back, the audience outside pounds the barricades harder, chanting with one voice. Jasmine locks eyes with the camera, speaking not just to the chamber but to every kitchen table, every living room across America. Do you think privilege is the deadliest shield in America? Because tonight, you've seen how paper and power were used to protect a predator while victims begged for protection. She lets the question linger, heavy as lead, before driving the knife deeper. And if privilege can protect a monster like Epstein, ask yourself what else, and who else, is hiding behind that same shield. The chamber is still vibrating from the clash with Greene when Jasmine strikes again, this time with evidence that stretches far beyond US soil. She cues the next slide, and a world map ignites behind her in red streaks, arrows connecting Moscow, Kiev, Tel Aviv, and Miami. Names of shell companies, private banks, and shadowy intermediaries crawl across the screen like veins of a diseased heart. Jasmine's voice is sharp, unrelenting. This was never just Palm Beach. This was never just one man. We are talking about forged visas from Russia, trafficked girls flown out of Ukraine, money laundered through Israeli fronts, and accountants here in America signing off as if nothing happened. The words strike like hammers, each arrow on the map another fracture splintering the wall of silence. Trump lunges forward, practically snarling into his mic. More globalist lies, more fake news propaganda. You people would say anything to smear me, to smear this country. He jabs a finger toward the screen, his voice ragged, spittle flecking the desk. None of this is real, none of it, just another hoax for the cameras. The eruption jolts the chamber, some gasping, others murmuring. But Jasmine waits, lets the rage burn itself out, and then slices through the nose with calm precision. Mr. Trump, what you call lies are sworn testimonies. What you call hoaxes are immigration records. What you dismiss as globalist conspiracies are survivors who crossed oceans, whose accents and passports could not protect them from being prey. For a moment her tone softens, not in weakness, but in memory. She steps back from the podium, eyes lowered as though looking into another time. I was a defense attorney once. I sat across from clients who were buried alive by this system. Not by evidence, but by indifference, Poor black men, poor immigrants, mothers who couldn't afford bail while the guilty walked free with polished shoes and powerful friends. The powerless are smothered in paperwork, while predators fly private jets. Her voice cracks just enough to bleed humanity into the theater of politics. Reporters stop scribbling and simply watch. Even the protesters outside grow momentarily quieter, their chants fading into a low, steady hum. Then she looks up, eyes blazing, and the softness hardens back into steel. She lifts a thin manila folder. It's tab marked in bold, internal Doge memo. The room stiffens, cameras zoom, and even Trump's shoulders lock at the sight of it. Jasmine holds it high, shaking it just once for emphasis. This is no longer about incompetence. This is no longer about negligence. This is a memo written by Department of Justice staff, documenting direct pressure from the White House to restrict disclosure of Epstein's files. The line detonates through the chamber like dynamite in a canyon. Trump opens his mouth, but no words come. The audience leans forward, as if pulled by gravity toward the truth about to be unsealed. Jasmine slams the folder down on the desk, eyes boring straight into the cameras. So the question tonight is not whether Epstein was protected. It is who in this building made sure that protection came from the highest office in the land and why. The folder still quivers on the desk when the chamber erupts into chaos. Jim Jordan springs forward, his voice cutting like static through the mic. Enough, we have rules, we have limits. 5 minutes per member, not these theatrics. His face flushes crimson, the veins in his neck taut with rage as he hammers the desk with his palm. The chamber echoes with his demand, and for a split second it feels like the gavel will fall, cutting Jasmine short. But Jasmine doesn't retreat, she leans in, eyes blazing, and her reply slices the air like a blade. Time, she pauses, lets the word hang like a guillotine above the room. Time doesn't belong to you, Mr. Jordan. Time belongs to the victims, to girls whose childhoods were stolen while powerful men pretended not to see. They have waited years for this moment, and I will not measure their pain with your stopwatch. The crowd outside roars as if the barricades themselves are answering her. Inside, reporters scramble, hands flying, knowing they've just witnessed a quote that will lead every broadcast in the nation. Jordan tries to bark back, but another voice cuts across the chamber, unexpected, deliberate, impossible to ignore. It's Thomas Massie, the Republican from Kentucky, known for his libertarian streak but rarely for siding with Democrats. His chair creaks as he stands, his tone measured, each word heavy as iron. I may not agree with the Congresswoman on much, but I agree on this. Subpoenas mean nothing if they're ignored. Oversight means nothing if it's manipulated. We can't dairy truth under procedure. Transparency is not optional, it is the foundation of this republic. Gasps ripple through the room like shockwaves. A Republican has broken ranks in real time, not with hesitation, but with clarity, throwing his weight behind Jasmine's demand for the full files. Reporters' heads snap toward one another, murmuring disbelief, fingers pounding keyboards as editors bark instructions into phones. Trump twists in his seat, his smirk cracking into something uglier, raw panic flashing for just a second before he covers it with scorn. Green shouts traitor across the aisle, but Massie doesn't flinch. He simply folds his hands in front of him and stares straight ahead, calm, resolute. Jasmine seizes the moment, her voice rising over the din. This is not partisan. This is not left or right. This is truth or silence. And tonight, we see cracks forming in the wall of denial. The camera zooms tight on her face as she turns toward Trump, her final words sharp enough to draw blood. If one voice from the other side can break ranks, could more follow? And if they do, Mr. Trump, how long before your wall of silence comes crashing down on top of you? The lights dim again and the next exhibit flashes onto the screen. A transcript, its black and white text projected large enough for the whole chamber to read. At the top, in bold, sits the name Alex Acosta, former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. Jasmine steps forward, binder in hand, her voice sharpening into the cadence of a cross-examiner. Mr. Acosta authorized what came to be known as the Sweetheart Deal, the no-prosecution agreement that spared Jeffrey Epstein from federal charges and worse, kept his victims in the dark. The chamber stiffens, and the silence grows. Heavy. She points to a section highlighted in yellow. The words glow on the screen. Victims were not to be informed until after the agreement was executed. Gasps ripple through the audience. Jasmine presses. This was not a mistake. This was not oversight. This was a deliberate violation of federal law, the Crime Victims' Rights Act, which requires notification before such decisions. Survivors were lied to by omission. They were told cases were moving forward, while signatures in backrooms killed those very cases. Her tone is cold, precise, every word landing like a hammer on stone. Trump shifts in his chair, muttering under his breath, but Jasmine doesn't even glance at him. She flips to the next page. Kira Costa writes, and I quote, "This decision has the approval of higher authority." Her eyes lift, pinning the DOJ officials like insects under glass. Who was this higher authority? Why does the transcript redact the names? Why were victims treated as obstacles instead of as citizens entitled to rights? The chamber stirs, reporters leaning forward, camera shutters clattering like gunfire. Her voice dips now, pulling emotion to the surface. I sat with one of those survivors years later. She said to me, they told me my voice mattered. But when I asked why no one called, why no one warned me, they said, "Oh honey, the deal was already done." She looked me dead in the eyes and asked, "Will anyone ever believe me now?" Jasmine's throat tightens, just for a moment, and the chamber feels it. A rare crack in armor, the humanity of a lawyer who has carried other people's silence too long. Then she slams the binder shut, the crack echoing like a gunshot. The softness is gone. Mr. Acosta may not be here in this chair, but his words are, his decisions are, and his fingerprints are all over this betrayal. The question now is simple, and America deserves the answer. She leans into the mic, eyes locked on the DOJ officials, her tone razor sharp. Who signed the no prosecution agreement? Name them. The chamber gasps, Trump jerks upright, and the room freezes at the edge of revelation. The weight of history pressing down like a storm waiting to break. The silence after Jasmine's demand is unbearable. A taut wire stretched across the chamber, ready to snap. Trump suddenly surges forward, slamming both palms on the desk, his face flushed crimson, voice booming so loud the microphones distort. You are a disgrace, Jasmine. A total disgrace to this country, to this chamber, to your party. You're grandstanding, lying, embarrassing yourself and everyone watching. His words ricochet off marble, half the chamber recoiling, half erupting in shouts. Jasmine doesn't flinch, she doesn't even blink. Instead, she tilts her head slightly, her eyes narrowing to slits, and her reply drops like a blade through thunder. Truth makes men like you sweat. The line slices so clean the room gasps. Audibly, the sting immediate, the air charged as if lightning just struck in the middle of the Capitol. Trump's bravado falters. He tries to laugh it off, but it comes out as a strangled cough, a stumble of nose that betrays the crack in his armor. Cameras zoom mercilessly, capturing every bead of sweat sliding down his temple, the way his lips twitch as he searches for words that won't come. The chamber seethes with electricity. Some lawmakers mutter under their breath, aides whisper frantically into phones, reporters bang furiously at their keyboards, the quote already spreading like wildfire. Trump points a finger across the aisle, jabbing toward Jasmine as if force alone could silence her. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know anything. You're pathetic, pathetic. His voice breaks on the last word, wrought, desperate, a man cornered. The chamber feels it, and the collective gasp is louder than any insult. Hurled. Jasmine steps closer to the mic, her voice calm but carrying the weight of a verdict. You call me a disgrace, but disgrace is shielding predators while victims are silenced. Disgrace is hiding behind power instead of facing the truth. And disgrace is exactly what the world is seeing on your face right now. She doesn't raise her voice, doesn't need to. The contrast her steady blade against his unraveling rage makes every syllable lethal. Trump grips the desk so hard his knuckles bleach white, his eyes darting from the screen to the cameras to the crowd, searching for an escape route that isn't there. The chamber holds its breath, frozen between spectacle and collapse. Jasmine doesn't let go. She presses forward, her tone measured but merciless. You can scream, you can insult, you can pound your fists, but there is one thing you cannot do. You cannot answer the simplest question with a simple yes or no. She leans closer, eyes boring into his, and when the most powerful man in the room can't do that, America should be asking what is he so afraid of. The words linger like smoke after an explosion, and for the first time, Trump is the one left speechless. The chamber still trembles from Trump's collapse into silence, and Jasmine seizes the moment, flipping back to the transcript of Alex Acosta. The pages glow under the lights, words that should have delivered justice but instead strangled it. She points to the redacted lines, the evasive language, the legal gymnastics that let Epstein walk free while his victims remained in the shadows. "These are not mistakes," Jasmine declares, her voice hard as iron. "These are choices, Alex." Acosta didn't stumble into silence, he engineered it. He wrote a script of erasure and called it justice. Gasps ripple through the chamber as she reads aloud, one line after another, phrases deliberately vague, terms designed to mislead. The words twist like barbed wire. Agreement entered. Higher authority approved. Victims notified at a later date. Jasmine slams her palm onto the desk. At a later date. After the deal was sealed. After the predator walked free. That isn't notification. That is deception. That is betrayal. The echo of her fury bounces off marble, filling every corner of the hall. She pauses, her tone shifting from sharp steel to aching weight. And let us be clear who pays the price when the system chooses deception. Not the wealthy, not the powerful. It is always the powerless who are silenced first. Her voice breaks into memory, her gaze distant. "I remember sitting with young black men, accused but not convicted, trapped in jail because they couldn't afford bail. I remember mothers working 2 jobs, losing custody of their children because they couldn't make it to court. And I remember survivors of abuse who whispered their truth to me, only for the system to bury their voices under a mountain of paper signed by men like Acosta." The chamber grows quieter still, even Trump shifting uncomfortably in his chair. Jasmine doesn't let go of the moment. She raises the transcript high, her voice carrying the weight of every client she once defended. "This isn't just about Jeffrey Epstein. This is about a system that protects the privileged and sacrifices the poor. A system that decided some voices didn't matter. That some lives weren't worth the ink of a signature." Reporters scribble frantically. Camera lenses zoom closer, and the nation feels the ground shift beneath its feet. Jasmine leans in, her voice a whisper that somehow cuts louder than any shout. Acosta's evasions weren't just paperwork. They were shackles placed on survivors. They were locks on courtroom doors. They were the sound of justice being strangled. Her words leave the chamber breathless, the silence afterward suffocating. Then she asks the question that detonates like a charge under the floorboards, her eyes drilling into the cameras, into the heart of every American watching. How many lives were erased by one man's signature? The line lingers like a bell, tolling for the dead, and the chamber sits frozen, knowing the answer may be more than the country can bear. The lights dim to black, and the chamber is swallowed in silence. Then the screen above the dais flickers, static buzzing, before resolving into the blurred silhouette of a young woman. Her voice emerges, electronically distorted, hollow and heavy, as though pulled from the bottom of a well. "He told me I was special, that I'd be safe. That the papers he gave me were real, that no one could question me." The words hang like smoke, clinging to the air, and for the first time in hours even the most hostile lawmakers shift uncomfortably in their seats. The image trembles slightly as her testimony continues. "The passport they gave me wasn't mine. It had my photo, but a different name." He laughed when I hesitated. He said, "Don't worry, the big men protect me. No one will ever touch you as long as you do what I say." The chamber gasps, a sound sharp and involuntary, as if the entire room inhaled at once. Reporters freeze mid-keystroke, cameras zoom tighter, and even Trump sits motionless, lips pressed into a thin line. The survivor's voice wavers, but doesn't break. "I remember the office, empty desks, fake phone lines. Guards who signed sheets, but never watched him. He told me the rules didn't apply to him. That the police, the judges, the politicians, they were his friends. He told me if I ever spoke, I'd disappear." A murmur ripples through the crowd outside, muffled chants fading into stunned silence as the feed transmits across giant screens on the Capitol lawn. Inside, the lawmakers who moments earlier were shouting now sit pinned to their chairs, unable to look away. Jasmine keeps her eyes on the survivor's shadowed face, her expression unreadable, but her hands clench so tight the knuckles whiten. She leans into the microphone, her voice low but steady, speaking not as a politician, but as a witness. "You are not invisible, you are not erased. Tonight, the whole world hears you." The words seem to steady the survivor, whose blurred outline nods before the feed cuts abruptly to black. The room doesn't exhale. It shudders. The chair's gavel hovers, but doesn't strike. Reporters exchange frantic glances, mouths moving without sound, as if no headline could capture the weight of what just unfolded. Trump shifts again, but his usual bravado is nowhere to be found. The screen's emptiness feels louder than any argument silence now weaponized against the men who once wielded it as a shield. Jasmine turns back to the chamber, her voice rising just enough to pierce the stunned stillness. That was one voice, distorted for safety, but there are hundreds more who never got the chance to speak, whose stories are buried in files still locked away. She lets the pause stretch until the tension is unbearable, then delivers the question that lands like a blade. Would you have the courage to speak if the world had silenced you, or would you let the silence win? The chamber holds its breath, and millions at home lean closer, knowing the answer will define not just this hearing, but the soul of the nation itself. The survivor's voice fades, the screen goes black, and the chamber sits paralyzed in a silence so thick it feels like chains around the throat. Jasmine rises slowly, her hands pressed to the desk, her eyes never leaving the darkness where the testimony had just played. When she finally speaks, her voice is soft but unwavering, slicing through the suffocating quiet. You are not a number, you are not a footnote. You are the evidence. The words don't just address the survivor, they echo outward, claiming the space, claiming the story, dragging the forgotten into the center of power. The chamber hums with a current that cannot be denied, but the moment fractures as Trump lunges at his microphone, his voice a jagged roar. Enough of this witch-hunt theater. This is nothing but staged lies, Democrat drama for the cameras. His words boom across the hall, harsh and frantic, the volume turned up to drown out the resonance of the testimony. Lawmakers on his side pound desks, trying to conjure chaos, to bury the moment under nose, but Jasmine doesn't blink. She straightens her back, her voice now sharp as tempered steel, each word delivered like a strike. Theater, no. Mr. Trump, this is not theater, this is a crime scene. And you. She jabs a finger toward him, eyes blazing. You are in the spotlight. The eruption is instant. Gasps ricochet off the marble. Reporters leap from their seats, and even the crowd outside can be heard howling as the line reverberates across the speakers. The words crash like a hammer against glass, cracking the illusion of control Trump has clung to all evening. For a heartbeat, the entire chamber tilts toward her. The nose, the rancor, the partisanship, it all collapses under the sheer force of conviction in her voice. The gallery leans forward. The journalists scramble to capture the exact phrasing, and aides on both sides whisper furiously into phones, knowing this moment will headline every screen in America by nightfall. Jasmine stands alone at the mic, her silhouette etched against the flood of light, embodying not just a congresswoman, but a blade of justice drawn against corruption. Trump's face flushes a deeper red, his chest heaving, words strangling in his throat. He pounds his fist against the table once, twice, to sound like gunshots in the tense chamber. His jaw tightens, his lips curl back, and his eyes burn holes. Into Jasmine's, the look of a man who has lost control yet refuses to concede. The gavel hovers, but the chair hesitates, unwilling to interrupt what has become less a hearing and more a duel. Jasmine doesn't break eye contact, doesn't flinch under the weight of his glare. The chamber holds its collective breath, balanced on the edge of eruption, and then silence, heavy, suffocating, explosive in its restraint. Trump leans forward, fists clenched so tight his knuckles blanch, his stare locked on Jasmine like a predator denied its strike. The entire nation watches, waiting for the inevitable detonation, knowing the next second could shatter everything. The chamber is a storm barely contained, Trump's fists still trembling on the desk, his glare locked like a weapon. Jasmine doesn't recoil. She steps into the fire, her voice rising with the weight of every silenced victim. This is the clash, she declares, each word rolling like thunder. On one side, survivors with nothing to gain but their truth. On the other, denials and smirks, excuses and rage. Victims ask only to be heard, while men like you call them liars. That is the choice before this country. Her voice swells, and the gallery stirs, murmur swelling into a low roar that feels like the earth itself shifting. Trump shoots back, shouting over her, all lies. Fake victims, fake stories, fake outrage, it's all orchestrated. His voice cracks at the edges, desperation leaking through. The microphones hiss with distortion, To sound harsh, ugly, Jasmine waits, lets him hang himself in the nose, and then cuts him down with surgical precision. Fake. Tell me, Mr. Trump, was it fake when Epstein abused girls while supposedly under supervision? Was it fake when immigration papers were forged? When guards signed phony sheets? When banks laundered his money? Was it fake when a young woman held up her false passport and whispered that she had been told the world would never believe her? The chamber gasps, a sound collective and uncontrollable. Trump's mouth opens, but no words come. For a moment, just a moment, he is silent. Reporters pounce, their commentary spilling live across television screens. This is it, one anchor breathes, the words playing over the feed. We are watching 41 seconds of stunned silence from Donald Trump, live on national television. The countdown ticks across the screen in bold red numbers, each second heavier than the last. The audience outside grows wilder, their chants pounding through the windows, full files, full truth. Inside, the silence breaks like a dam, not with Trump's voice, but with the eruption of the chamber itself. Applause, shouts, pounding fists on desks, all clashing together in a chaotic symphony. Jasmine stands in the center, calm amid the storm, her voice cutting above it all. This is what truth does. It doesn't need to scream, it doesn't need to pound its fists. Truth waits, and silence betrays those who cannot face it. The room roars back, the swell of sound so overwhelming the gavel is useless. Jasmine raises her hand, and gradually the din subsides, though the energy hums like fire beneath the surface. She turns back toward Trump, her eyes unblinking, her voice steady but charged with fire. When silence is louder than words, whose side does history take? The survivors who dared to speak, or the man who cannot answer the simplest question of yes or no? The chamber holds its breath again, caught between triumph and collapse, as every eye waits for the next move in a battle that feels less like politics and more like Judgment Day. The gavel pounds helplessly against the desk, but the chamber has already transformed into something rawer than politics, an arena where truth is hunted in real time. Jasmine Crockett steps forward, eyes locked on Trump with a precision that feels lethal. Her voice cuts through the roar, measured but merciless. Yes or no? Did you pressure the Department of Justice to limit the release of Epstein's files? The words drop like stones into a still lake, the ripples spreading outward until even the protesters outside seem to freeze mid-chant. Trump leans back, lips curling, trying to smirk but failing as his jaw twitches. That's a ridiculous question. He deflects, waving a hand. Total nonsense. Another witch hunt. Jasmine doesn't blink. She leans closer, repeats it, sharper now, each syllable a blade. Yes or no? Did you pressure the DOJ to demand? Echoes, rattling against marble, drilling into the silence that follows. Trump opens his mouth again, reaching for the familiar script. Fake news, Democrats, hoax. But Jasmine cuts him off mid-breath. Not spin, not slogans. A single word, yes or no. She gestures to the digital clock on the wall, and suddenly the camera zooms in, the red numbers glaring as they begin to tick. 1 second, 2, 3. The chamber grows unnervingly quiet, every shuffle of paper, every cough from the gallery amplified into thunder. By 10 seconds, reporters are already typing furiously, their screens lit with breaking banners. Trump, silent under question. By 20, the silence begins to crush the room itself, lawmakers shifting uncomfortably, the crowd outside falling eerily still as if the nation collectively leaned in. By 30, sweat beads along Trump's temple, glistening under the relentless lights. He grips the desk tighter, his knuckles bone white, his smirk now grimace. The lens zooms closer still, capturing every tremor in his jaw, every flicker of panic that betrays the man behind the mask. And then 41 seconds, the longest silence of his political life, played out live before millions. 41 seconds where a former president, once the loudest voice in any room, cannot produce even a single word. The chamber gasps collectively, some lawmakers slamming fists on the desk, others whispering prayers under their breath. The sound is not absence but revelation, the silence louder, sharper, more devastating than any admission. Jasmine leans in, her voice low, steady, unflinching, slicing through the stillness. What do you hear in silence? Fear, guilt, or truth? The question lands like a hammer blow, reverberating not just in the chamber but across every living room, every headline, every heart still listening. And in that moment, the The silence becomes its own confession, one the world will not forget. The chamber is still vibrating from those 41 seconds of unbearable silence when Trump snaps. He slams his fist onto the desk, rattling the microphones, his voice exploding into the void with a fury that feels desperate rather than dominant. This is a setup, a disgrace, nothing but conspiracies cooked up by radical Democrats, the fake media, the deep state are all in on it. His words pour out like shrapnel, jagged and incoherent, a torrent of rage trying to drown the memory of his own silence. His face burns crimson, sweat glistening under the unrelenting lights, and his voice cracks as he rants about witch hunts and traitors. But Jasmine doesn't move. She doesn't shout, she doesn't even blink. She waits, calm in the eye of the storm, until his fury begins to sound like a man screaming against his own echo. Then she leans into her microphone, her tone low, steady, lethal. "Silence," she says, each syllable slow as a drumbeat, is the confession of power unmasked. The chamber gasps as if the air itself has been sucked out. Some rise to their feet in applause, others collapse back into their chairs. Stunned. The contrast is cinematic. Trump red-faced, fists trembling, drowning in his own nose, while Jasmine stands tall, serene, cutting through chaos with a scalpel of truth. The emotional whiplash strikes the room like a lightning bolt. Reporters type furiously, their feeds exploding with headlines. Crockett, silence is confession. Cameras pan across the gallery, capturing jaws drop, eyes wide, tears glistening on cheeks. Protesters outside erupt into chants, their voices rolling like thunder against the marble walls. Full files, full truth, full justice. The rhythm matches Jasmine's words, each chant reinforcing her line, until it feels carved into stone. Trump tries to speak again, but the chamber no longer belongs to him. His words falter, swallowed by the roar of the crowd, the crackle of camera shutters, the sheer weight of Jasmine's composure. He points at her, shouting hoarsely, "You'll regret this. You'll all regret this." But his voice is smaller now, weaker, trembling on the edge of collapse. Jasmine raises her hand and the chamber quiets, the way soldiers still when a commander lifts her sword. Her expression is unreadable, her voice carrying the conviction of history itself. This isn't about regret. This is about justice, and justice cannot wait another day. The words ignite the room, a mixture of gasps, cheers, and stunned silence blending into a singular, unforgettable moment. The chair bangs the gavel desperately, but it does nothing to contain the fire raging inside the chamber. Reporters shout questions over one another, aides clutch documents, lawmakers exchange frantic glances. For the first time, the spotlight shifts from the theatrics of denial to the machinery of consequence. And then the hook lands, Jasmine's words hanging heavy, aimed not at Trump but at the Department of Justice itself. 41 seconds of silence revealed more than 1,000 pages ever could. The only question left is this: will the DOJ finally act, or will it join the silence? The chamber freezes again, America suspended in anticipation, waiting for an answer that could change everything. The uproar still simmers from Trump's collapse when Jasmine moves again, swift and deliberate. She lifts a wide chart high above her head, then unfurls it across the witness table so the cameras can capture every damning line. The graphic is a spider's web at the center, Epstein's name burned in black, radiating outward to blurred names of law firms, financial institutions, and political figures. The lines crisscross like veins, a diseased organ, arrows marked with dates, transactions, signatures. Even blurred, the implications strike like thunder. This was not a lone predator, but an ecosystem engineered to protect him. The screen behind her illuminates the chart, each blurred name a shadow that feels more dangerous than if it had been spoken aloud. Jasmine's voice cuts through the room like a scalpel. This is the architecture of complicity, not just one man, but lawyers who signed the contracts, banks that washed the money, politicians who looked the other way while girls were trafficked across borders. You see blurred names because this investigation is ongoing. But make no mistake, those names exist, and they are powerful. The chamber stiffens, tension snapping like brittle glass. Reporters lean forward, hungry, their fingers trembling as they type. Trump slams his fist on the desk, his voice raw and ragged. You can't show that. You can't just throw up smears without proof. But Jasmine doesn't even glance at him. Her eyes burn into the cameras, her tone ironclad. This isn't a smear. This is the blueprint of a system designed to silence victims and shield predators. A system propped up by wealth, influence, and fear. And tonight, the cracks in that system are showing. The chamber trembles literally, as the roar from the protesters outside rattles the windows. Their chants synchronize into a single booming voice. Release the files. Release the files. The sound rises like an earthquake rolling through marble. Inside, lawmakers shift nervously, some looking at Trump, others staring at Jasmine, as if the ground has shifted beneath their feet. And then, in a moment that shocks even the reporters, Thomas Massie stands again. His voice is steady, cutting through the din like steel. Enough delays, enough partial truths. I don't care whose names are in those files, every page must be released. All of it, the people deserve to know. Gasps erupt, cameras flash. The chamber lurches in disbelief. A Republican has just demanded full disclosure, breaking ranks in front of the entire nation. Trump's head jerks toward him, eyes wide with fury, while Green screeches traitor from the corner. But Massie doesn't waver, his gaze fixed forward, unflinching. Jasmine seizes the moment, her voice rising above the chaos. Fernand, electrifying. If the truth can unite enemies in this chamber, then ask yourself, what else can it break? Walls of silence, chains of corruption. The power of those who thought they were untouchable. The chamber shudders, every soul inside, knowing the battle lines have been redrawn, and history is pressing its face against the glass, waiting to be written. The chamber quakes under Massie's defection, but before the shock can settle, Marjorie Taylor Greene shoots up from her seat like a cannon blast. Her voice pierces the room, shrill and venomous. Traitor. You've betrayed your own party, betrayed your president, betrayed America. She jabs a finger at Massie, then spins toward Jasmine, her face contorted with fury. And you, this is your circus, your witch hunt. You'll drag down anyone who dares to stand in your way. Her words bounce off marble, shrieks unraveling into hysteria, but the chamber doesn't rally to her. Instead, all eyes snap back to Jasmine. Jasmine rises slowly, measured, the calm at the center of chaos. She steps forward, her voice low, steady, each syllable precise as a blade drawn across steel. Betrayal isn't asking for truth. She lets the lime breathe, the silence heavy as stone. Then she slams her palm down on the desk, her eyes blazing. Betrayal is selling your voice to power. Betrayal is defending silence while survivors are still screaming to be heard. Betrayal is protecting predators because their checks are big enough and their names are heavy enough to scare you. The chamber explodes, gasps colliding with cheers, and even Green falters, her mouth still open but no sound coming out. Reporters hammer at their keyboards, some rising from their seats as if to catch the words faster. And then, the screens around the chamber light up with breaking graphics, a new national poll. Red bars and blue bars climb side by side, merging into one undeniable message. 78% of Americans, Democrats, Republicans, Independents demand the full release of Epstein's files. The graphic spins across televisions nationwide. Anchors breathless. In the chamber, aides hold phones high, the glow of the data reflecting off their stunned faces. The roar from outside intensifies, chants turning into a singular demand. All the files, all the files. Trump slouches deeper into his chair, jaw clenched, a bead of sweat cutting down his cheek. Green shakes her head furiously, muttering into the mic about conspiracies, but no one is listening anymore. The momentum has shifted, the walls of denial cracking under the weight of public will. Jasmine seizes it, raising her hand for silence. The people have spoken. This isn't about parties. This isn't about careers. This is about justice. And justice doesn't wait for permission, it demands action. The gavel slams, desperate to contain the storm, but the moment is already bigger than the chamber. Reporters yell over one another, cameras flash like lightning, and staffers rush to confirm what scrolls across their devices. A banner breaks through the static. Doge statement expected. Considering next steps, the room goes still for a beat, harsh thudding as the implication sinks in. Jasmine leans into the mic one final time, her voice low but carrying the weight of inevitability. The wall is crumbling. The only question left is whether the Department of Justice will stand with the people or be buried under its own silence. The words slice through the chamber, leaving everyone bracing for the earthquake about to come. Jim Jordan lunges back into the fray, his voice booming, words spilling like a machine gun without aim. This is political theater. This is a vendetta. We should be talking about inflation, about border security, not wasting taxpayer money on ancient cases and fabricated lies. He keeps talking, refusing to yield. His filibuster a wall of no's, meant to smother Jasmine's fire. The chamber groans, reporters sigh, but Jasmine waits, posed like a blade sharpening on stone. She cuts in, her voice crisp, surgical. Mr. Jordan, you speak of wasted time yet you cannot answer a single question. Did Epstein's files get buried? Yes or no? Were victims notified? Yes or no? Did Acosta violate federal law? Yes or no? Each question slices through his bluster, each syllable pinning him tighter against the ropes. Jordan flails, retreating into slogans, but the precision of her attack exposes his nose for what it is: deflection. The chamber stirs, lawmakers shifting, the crowd outside roaring as if sensing the collapse of his defense. Then, from the gallery, a new voice breaks through. Nancy Pelosi, seated as an observer, rises and speaks, her tone solemn but ringing with authority. I've watched countless hearings in my lifetime, but I have rarely seen courage wielded with such clarity. Congresswoman Crockett is not grandstanding. She is standing in the gap where others have chosen silence. The room jolts, cameras swinging, reporters scrambling to capture the rare intervention. Pelosi's words echo like benediction, her praise transforming the hearing into something larger than partisan combat, something historic. Jasmine stands motionless, her eyes glinting under the lights, her expression firm but humble. For a moment, she embodies something more than a politician. She is the warrior who refuses to look away, the advocate who speaks not for herself but for those who were told their voices did not matter. The chamber feels it, the nation watching feels the shift from confrontation to conviction, from chaos to clarity. The chants outside thunder louder, vibrating through the marble like a second heartbeat. Full files, full truth. Jasmine raises her chin, her voice steady, unyielding. You can scream, you can stall, you can hide behind walls of no's, but truth cuts through no's, truth cuts through denial. And the only question left is this: can one voice cut through a fortress of denial and bring the whole wall crashing down? The chamber holds its breath, waiting for the answer. The gavel echoes through the chamber, but its authority is lost. The story has already escaped these walls and spilled into every corner of America. On television screens, anchors lean forward, with widened eyes, voices hushed with disbelief. 41 seconds of silence. A moment that may redefine this investigation forever, one commentator declares, as the clip replays on loop, Trump's frozen face juxtaposed against Jasmine's piercing stare. Another network's Chiron screams, Crockett demands answers, Trump silent. Bars are packed with late-night viewers, patrons shouting at the screens, some pounding their fists in rhythm with Jasmine's words. In a small-town diner, a waitress pauses mid-shift, coffee pot trembling in her hand as she stares at the replay. In hospital nursing stations, exhausted staff gather around a single TV. Murmuring, she said, what we've all wanted someone to say. In living rooms, families sit edge to edge on couches, parents explaining to their children why the silence they just witnessed might be louder than any answer. Social media detonates in real time. Hashtags surge to the top within minutes. Hashtag full files. Hashtag for 1 seconds. Hashtag Crockett vs. Trump. Clips are remixed into TikToks, slowed down to show every twitch on Trump's face, every unflinching second of Jasmine's stare. Twitter floods with side-by-side comparisons. On one half, Trump railing against hoaxes. On the other, his silence stretched like an endless void. Memes spread like wildfire, but so do survivor testimonies, voices emboldened by what they just saw. A movement begins to crystallize in real time, not orchestrated but organic, pulsing with the urgency of a nation that feels has just glimpsed the truth behind the curtain. Inside the Capitol, reporters shout questions, their phones buzzing nonstop with producers screaming in their ears. Lawmakers huddle in tense corners, some shaken, some calculating, all knowing that history has shifted under their feet. And through it all, Jasmine remains standing at the center, her presence a steady flame against a storm. She leans back into the microphone, her voice not raised but softened into a whisper that somehow cuts sharper than every shout before it. The fight is not done. The line drops into the chamber like a final stone into deep water, rippling outward to every home, every bar, every hospital room still tuned in. It is not a conclusion, it is a declaration of war. The crowd outside erupts, the chants roar, louder than ever, and the nation braces, breathless, for what comes next. The chamber vibrates with the energy of a nation watching its own reflection, every eye locked on the electronic board mounted above the speaker's chair. The vote begins, one by one. The lights blink green, red, green again, each flash a drumbeat of history. Reporters grip their phones with white knuckles, anchors whisper live updates into microphones, and outside, the crowd counts along with every tally as though the future itself is being decided in real time. The question is stark. Compel the Department of Justice to release 100% of the Epstein files. No more fragments, no more 3%, all of it. The screen fills with numbers, the chamber swelling with murmurs. Trump leans forward, his face pale beneath the bright lights, his smirk long vanished, replaced by something raw fear. His allies glance at him, but none move to speak. He is isolated, the aura of invincibility stripped away, sitting in the same seat where, minutes earlier, he shouted down survivors. Now, as the vote surges toward majority, his hands tighten on the desk, the faint tremor betraying what words cannot hide. Then it happens, the threshold is crossed. The board flashes in bold, resolution passes, Doge compelled to release full files, the chamber explodes, a roar so loud it rattles chandeliers and shakes marble columns. Some lawmakers leap to their feet, others bow their heads as if in prayer. Reporters scramble for the exits to beam the news across the globe. And outside, the crowd becomes a tidal wave, their chants deafening, rolling across the Capitol lawn like thunder. Jasmine does not cheer. She stands motionless, her hands resting on the desk, her face grave but resolute. She knows this moment is not victory but reckoning. Her voice, calm yet charged with fire, slices through the chaos. This is not the end. This is the beginning. We have torn down the wall of silence, but when the walls fall, what remains, truth or rubble? The chamber falls still, her words sinking deep, heavier than the gavel itself. Trump lowers his head, shoulders hunched, as if the weight of those 41 seconds now crushes him in full view of the world. The room breathes as one. Every soul, aware they have stepped into a new chapter of history. The files will come, the truth is coming. And America waits, trembling, to see what it will reveal. The vote still echoes in the chamber when Jasmine Crockett steps away from the desk, her figure cutting through the marble corridor toward the great doors of the Capitol. Reporters swarm but keep their distance, sensing this is not the moment for questions, but for history to breathe. As the doors swing open, a flood of sound crashes in cheers, chants, sobs, the raw voice of a nation gathered outside. Survivors stand at the barricades, some clutching photos, others holding trembling signs. When they see her, they surge forward, arms raised not in protest now, but in gratitude. Jasmine descends the steps slowly, each stride deliberate, the cameras capturing every second. The crowd parts, and in the front row, survivors reach out. She clasps their hands, grips them firmly, eyes locking with theirs as if to say, I see you. I hear you. I believe you. Tears stream freely down faces in the crowd, and for once they are not tears of despair, but of vindication. The chants shift, turning rhythmic, unify. Justice, justice, justice. The sound swells until it rolls across the Capitol lawn like a tidal wave. Jasmine lifts the microphone waiting at the base of the steps. The roar dims, but does not die. Anticipation, hanging heavy, her voice, steady yet charged with emotion, carries over the crowd and into the cameras broadcasting live. A nation is not measured by how it shields the powerful, but by how it protects the powerless. The words strike deep, landing not as rhetoric but as a vow. The crowd erupts, some screaming, some weeping, others chanting louder than before. Even the press corps momentarily lowers their cameras, stunned into silence by the gravity of the lie. The emotional swell reaches its peak. Survivors embrace one another. Strangers clasp hands. Supporters lift banners higher. The Capitol, once a backdrop of silence, now vibrates with something rare hope. For the first time in years, the powerless feel the system lean toward them. Instead of away, Jasmine stands amid it, not triumphant, but resolute, her face framed by the floodlights, her silhouette burned into the collective memory of a nation. She leans once more into the mic, her voice dropping into a solemn challenge. Sharper than any gavel strike, Will America finally stand for the voiceless? The question hangs in the air like a verdict not yet rendered, and the nation holds its breath, knowing the answer will determine whether this night becomes a fleeting headline or the spark of a revolution. The Capitol steps are still trembling with chants when the camera pulls back, lifting above the crowd that floods the lawn like a living tide. Their voices roll together, one word pounding like a heartbeat into the night. Justice, justice, justice. Floodlights wash the marble in gold, but the true light comes from the faces below, survivors holding signs, families gripping one another, ordinary citizens who came to witness history being wrestled out of silence. Over it all, Jasmine Crockett stands framed against the dome, not as a politician seeking applause, but as something sharper, older, almost mythic. The narration rises, her story reframed not as a list of battles won, but as a legacy of lives defended. She did not come to count enemies defeated. She came to stand between the voiceless and the void. She came to make the forgotten visible, the silenced heard, the powerless protected. Her silhouette, carved against the night sky, feels less like one woman and more like the embodiment of a principle long starved of breath. The cameras cut to the survivors in the front row, tears streaking down cheeks, hands pressed together. As if in prayer, they chant her name, not as worship but as recognition, as if to say, "You carried us here." The sound builds, shaking windows, vibrating through the marble foundation of the very institution that once ignored them. The roar of justice grows louder, folding into itself until it becomes more than protest, it becomes a vow. The screen begins to fade to black, but Jasmine's voice returns, clear and unflinching, the final reflection searing itself into memory. If silence is complicity, then your voice is power. What will you do with it? The line lands heavy, echoing into kitchens and living rooms, into earbuds and hospital rooms, forcing every viewer not just to watch history, but to decide how they will stand inside it. The narration halts, leaving only the crowds chant justice, 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 rolling into darkness like thunder that refuses to die. Then, the final call to action flashes across the screen, sharp and urgent, a bridge from witness to participant. Type full files in the comments if you demand 100% truth. The letters pulse as the chant grows louder, daring the viewer to do more than watch, daring them to join. And with that, the screen cuts to black, but the echo remains in America, trembling on the edge of revelation, waiting to see if this night was the crack of collapse or the birth of a reckoning. In every society, silence can be as dangerous as the crime itself. Jasmine's fight reminds us that justice is not just about punishing the guilty, but about defending those who have been ignored, dismissed, or erased. Her courage shows that one voice, when steady and unflinching, can shatter walls built by fear and privilege. In our daily lives, we face smaller versions of these choices, whether to stay silent or to speak for what's right. The question is, when confronted with injustice, will you protect your comfort, or will you use your voice to protect the powerless? Thank you for watching until this moment and for standing with us on this journey for justice. Your support means everything. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what moved you most in this story. Together, our voices make a difference.